Hello, everyone, and welcome back to From the Stands. This is the College Football Game Day Show. We are on week six. Sixth time. I got my buds to my left and my right here. Andy Hopper to my left. Tom Scavetta to my right. We're going to jump right into it again because we got some good games on the slate and had some good games on the slate this past week. Andy, what were you watching in week 5 and what stood out to you?
Unfortunately, my team picked up their first loss of the year after I talked a bunch of fucking shit last week, so I will give Penn State some credit. They beat Illinois 21-7 in Happy Valley. Really close game. This was anybody's game. Felt like Penn State just did everything in their power to hand the game over to Illinois, and Illinois did not take advantage of that, but I will really give credit to their offensive and defensive line because I felt like Penn State just dominated the trenches. They created huge holes for Singleton and Katron Allen. They both went over 90 yards for Penn State. Aller wasn't anything special, only 135 yards to the air, but they really didn't need to throw because they were getting whatever they wanted on the ground. And then Penn State defensively, they pressured Altmaier a lot, made life pretty tough for him, held Pat Bryant to only like 22 yards. And then the run game for Illinois was pretty rough as well, of course, after I hyped it up last week on the show. So moral of the story, don't listen to me, but great teams cover. And then just a couple more quick ones that I watched. How about Kentucky going to Ole Miss? I think they won in Oxford for the first time since like 1978 or something crazy like that. Oklahoma State's dead. Put a fork in them. They suck. 42-20 loss to Kansas State. USC was pretty close with Wisconsin for most of that game. Ended up pulling away at the end there, 38-21. Tom's Fighting Irish, I think, really looked like the better team. Forced Louisville into a lot of mistakes and picked up that win. And Brian, I'm so sorry. Another one I was dead wrong about. Colorado just kind of, I don't want to say beat the brakes off you guys, but they kind of kicked your ass.
No, they did.
At the bounce house.
Brake lines were fully cut.
Yeah. And then the last one I'll mention is North Carolina blowing another lead, and they lost to Duke. Duke coming back 21-20 win in that Tobacco Road rivalry. That's not usually very highly touted for football, but yeah, sorry, that was a lot for me as usual. But there's again, it's been every week I say this. There's a lot of good games. It has been an awesome year so far, guys.
Yeah, it has been a lot of good action. Tom, what about you?
I've been on the show since the end of 2020, like late in the season, week 9, whatever it was. Last week was the first time I ever went 0-6 in shots and chasers. I went 0-6 last week. Guys, I don't know why you keep bringing me back. I'm terrible at picking games this week specifically, but in all seriousness, Alabama surviving Georgia after UGA took the lead late. Carson Beck had 4 turnovers. Not all of them were his fault, but he had a sluggish game despite throwing for 400-plus yards and 3 touchdowns. UGA's defense had 0 sacks in that game, just 3 for 15 on third down. That is not a recipe for success. And Jalen Milroe accounted for 5 scores, 3 passing, 2 rushing. Phenomenal. A 30-7 lead at halftime, diminished, and then they come back and score in the last minute of the game. I mean, you can't draw a Bama-Georgia game up better. I think since Kirby Smart got into like his 3rd, 4th year coaching, like 2019 around then, Georgia has not lost to anybody besides Alabama. Yeah, they're 1-3 against Bama, and they're undefeated against everybody else. So how's that for a stat? And quickly here, I know Andy touched on Illinois. He touched on the UK upset as well. Oh man, Notre Dame. So it's really a love-hate relationship with this team because once you think they're like not going to play well, they play great, and that's what happened post NIU against Purdue. Yeah, 28-3 against Miami, Ohio, but they played bad. And then last week, they played well. So Riley Leonard is like Jekyll and Hyde at quarterback, but I'm going to say it. He had a good game. He had a really good game. 2 touchdown passes, not rushing touchdowns, passes. He's playing the quarterback position. That defense forced 3 Cardinals turnovers. Louisville did win time of possession and held Notre Dame 2 for 10 on third down, but Notre Dame kept themselves out of third down for majority of that game, and that's why they beat the Ville by 7 points. And Notre Dame, do you put it an 11-win team maybe with 1 loss to NIU by 2 in the CFP?
We're talking about it.
Oh man, we might have to talk about that in a few weeks if they keep winning like this because they got some games down the stretch we're gonna have to talk about, and they might be back, boys. They might be back.
Tom is the definition of just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Me. That is Tom right now. Put it on the screen, Brian. Oh my God. But yeah, no, I can't blame you. I'd be doing the exact same thing. Yeah. I do think an 11-1 Notre Dame gets in, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. With this many teams now in the playoffs, there's no way they don't. But yeah, for me, I think what we learned, Tom, you said it's your first 0-6. I'm sure me and Andy have had a few of those.
That's just as impressive as 6-0, by the way.
It really is. It really is. But I think our problem here is that when we throw our own teams into the mix, if you hype them up, they lose, and if you hype them down like Tom did last week, they go and surprise you with a win.
Exactly.
So that's what happened to all our teams last week. But no, obviously the Alabama-Georgia game, absolutely wild game. Alabama did look like the better team just because they controlled more of the game, but two super, super good teams. And then it seems like, I know we talked about, I think last week, Andy just quickly ran through who the top four were probably going to be. And after this week, I think you can almost lock that in. Maybe throw Ohio State in the mix as well, because everyone else outside of that like top five just doesn't look like they're anywhere on par with those top four teams. And I know there's more spots in the playoff this year, so it doesn't really matter. But I mean, the competition to just run with those big dogs this year is going to be really, really difficult. I think there were so many close games for the top 15 teams that they either lost or squeaked out a win. Miami only went by 4 points over Virginia Tech. Texas, I guess, did handle Mississippi State pretty handily, but this is a really bad Mississippi State team. Ole Miss obviously got that loss. Michigan only wins by 3. Like Andy mentioned, USC barely hanging on there. They did look good at the end, but they let Wisconsin hang around. So a lot of games were, I don't know, they have me questioning outside of that top 5 range how good those squads are going to look once we get towards the playoffs. That'll bring us into our weekly news segment this week. It is Growing Pains. We've got 3 stories here related to how these conferences are growing, merging, adding teams, what so have you. And our first one here is the Miami Hurricanes. Miami equipment truck, as of yesterday evening, was it was less than halfway to Cal for Saturday's game. It had reached 1,200 miles out of the 3,000-mile journey. I looked on a quick Google map. There was 3 routes they could take. But the quickest one that Google said, that would put them around Tyler, Texas. So I'm sure they're a little bit farther today, obviously, but it is Thursday night as we film this. So my question for you guys is, obviously the growing pain here, this is a conference game, coast to coast, quite literally, as far south of Miami as you can go to Southern California. My question is this going to start sort of like an arms race here between these teams as they go for conferences merging, for TV rights, but it's going to make logistically these absolutely insane paths for the rest of these squads outside of the actual players to deal with. So Andy, what are your thoughts here on this, cross-country road trip we've got going on here?
I mean, it's cool or whatever. Like, it's a cool story. It's honestly hilarious that it's gotten to this point. But man, I think I go back to the point Chip Kelly made last year. It's like, why wouldn't you have, let football be independent? You don't have to have a conference and make everything else more regional. And that was purely based on travel. But I mean, think about the cost. Like you mentioned, the logistics, the cost of the gas to get this truck there, the lodging for whoever's driving it, food and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that shit's just going to amplify. And then California is going to have to do it when they go play Miami next year or whenever that's scheduled. The funniest possible outcome for the ACC this year, in my opinion, is a Cal-Stanford championship game in Charlotte. So both of them will have to do that. But I don't know. I think it's ridiculous to have to make these schools travel that much for, obviously non-conferences is different, but these schools are going to start packing the fucking miles on routinely. So, I mean, I hope they're compensating these drivers pretty well.
Yeah, your truckers do get paid pretty well. So, Tom, what are your thoughts here?
Or you could be Notre Dame and you don't have this problem. You could be independent, just play whoever the hell you want. So according to, I just got an update, or I searched for it, Front Office Sports on Twitter, @FOS, Miami's football equipment truck has made it to California. It's traveled more than 2,700 miles ahead of the team's ACC matchup with Cal on Saturday. So 1,200 as of Wednesday evening. They booked 1,500 miles today.
Wow.
That is insane. Big yikes. Yeah, no, I mean, this is the whole thing with the Power Four now. This is what you're going to get. Schools traveling across the country to play teams. It's not great. The optics of it aren't good either. But it's not just in college. Look at the pros, right? The Dallas Cowboys play in the NFC East. Are they in the eastern part of the country? No. So I think that's a perfect example, right? But the difference here is they have a lot more money than some of these schools do that are trying to, market themselves and, find a way to improve their recruitment, improve their sales, and, Cal joining the ACC, forcing a team like Miami, who's been there for several years, having to go out there and do that? No, it's not ideal. I don't like the fact that the ACC is bringing West Coast teams, but this is the world of college football that we live in, and it's going to continue.
It is. Yeah, for me, for the East Coast teams that are already in the ACC, it's really not that bad. But man, you really got to feel for Cal and Stanford, who are going to have to take 4 or 5 road games a year to the East Coast. I guess it's not so bad for the team because they'll be flying, but like Andy said, for these truckers putting in the miles. And as Tom, if the tweet that you saw is correct, if that tweet was made right now, and they got 8 hours of sleep at the exact moment that the tweet went out yesterday about being 1,200 miles in, that means they've been if they were on the road for 21 hours straight to get there, they were averaging at least 71 miles per hour. I don't know if they've been driving for 21 hours straight, which means those guys were absolutely booking it. So shout out to those drivers. I'm sure they're doing it safely, but put the pedal to the metal there to get the boys their equipment by Thursday night.
Buc-ee's.
Yeah, they probably did stop at a Buc-ee's on the way. Actually, no. Yeah, I learned 2 days ago, random fun fact, since we share Buc-ee's fun facts in our private chat. Buc-ee's does not have room for semi-trailers. Little fun fact for you there.
That's not fun. Damn.
That's just what I heard.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah, not fun for them. But yeah, that'll move us into our next one. It is based on TV ratings. I will throw the ratings over our beautiful faces here. 4 of the top 10 most watched games this week were games featuring a non-ranked versus a ranked matchup, where one of the teams came from one of the teams was new to a conference. So they came from either a G5 or another P5, transferred to this new conference for this matchup. I don't know about you guys, but taking a look at these top 10 here, I'm a little surprised that many have made this list. They're not, again, this is a non-ranked versus ranked, so it's not like they're top matchups of the week or anything. It's like a top 10 battle. And yeah, you've got Colorado, UCF in there at number 3. It's kind of surprising to me. Wisconsin, USC, Midwest versus West Coast battle there, middle of the day, up there in the top 10. Andy, what are your thoughts here about how well these games are doing? Do you think this is going to, again, be another thing that these other P5 conferences that are kind of, waving in the wind like the Pac-12, almost about to disappear, or G5 teams might be looking and saying, we need to make a move now because look at all this money we could be leaving on the table if we're not one of the last teams to jump into these power conferences and get these deals.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's kind of scrambling to get their piece of the pie, right? I mean, that's kind of what college athletics has turned into and been for quite a while. Mike Evans' second touchdown of the day. Bucks take the lead. You're welcome,
Let's
Brian,
go.
For the update. But yeah, no, everybody loves the underdog story, right? I think that kind of what draws me to this number too. And you look at some of the teams on this list: Colorado going to UCF. Obviously, how polarizing Deion's been and Shadur. And then you have Oklahoma and Auburn. Oklahoma's first road game in the SEC, which Auburn completely blew. They outgained Oklahoma by I think 200 yards and still found a way to lose that game. USC, no, not their first game in the Big Ten because they lost to Michigan. Nice to see Washington and Rutgers on this list too. I know neither of these teams ranked, but rank Rutgers, you cowards. And then Virginia Tech ended up giving Miami a hell of a game. So I think people are just going to gravitate to where the games are close and where they're good games. And if you look at this list, Georgia, Alabama, I mean, that turned into a fucking instant classic there at the end. You had the St. Bill Snyder, the guy that shoved the beefy 5-layer burrito up his ass. Did you guys see his tweet during the Georgia, Alabama game?
I did not. What happened?
He tweeted when Bama was up 30-0. He said, if Georgia comes back and wins, I'll do a face reveal and ruin my life.
Oh my God.
So can you imagine how much he was shitting his pants at the end of that game? And I guess his wife found out about the tweet too. He said that. He said, somebody sent the tweet to my wife. I'm cooked.
They probably recognized the kitchen that he took the first video in.
Oh yeah.
Oh shit. But yeah, no, I think you're totally right, Brian. I think the teams are going to see this and just we got to make a move now. So I think the Pac-12. I mean, as long as they get a decent commissioner in there that's not going to sell the conference short. We saw how their revenue share went a couple of years ago, and one of the reasons why everything kind of blew up in their faces. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason why. Well, I guess I shouldn't say no reason. They have to have the teams that people are going to want to watch, right? People care about in the conference. But yeah, I mean, I agree.
All right, Tom.
So yeah, I'm with you here, but I mean, it's because they're watching the more well-known team, in my opinion. Look, I'm not going to watch a G5 school over a Power 4. No disrespect, but I'll watch a game with the G5 if it includes a Power 4. Alabama, Georgia last week had almost 12 million on average.
Yeah.
Second highest was Oklahoma and Auburn, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't know. if I'm kind of hitting a double-edged sword here with this one. Yeah, other schools are going to want to jump in on this. Like, if you're smart, yeah, I mean, you go where the money is, right? That's how business works, and college football has turned into a business, and that's what schools should do. So, all in all, if I'm a team like James Madison, I'm dominating the Sun Belt. I'm rolling up 70 points against an ACC school, by the way, in North Carolina. I'm not saying that's anything super special. Why not join the ACC? Why not join the Big 12? Why not try to make a move? The ACC would make more sense for them because they're East Coast school, but it would just make a lot of sense for a school like that. Put them on our radar, right? We know about James Madison because we're college football analysts. That's what we do. But your average Joe who's walking on the street, James Madison's good at football. These are the reasons why schools should make this jump. So talking myself through this here live on the segment, I think has convinced me that, there is a lot of realignment space. But eventually, these conferences do get overcrowded. They're going to have to split this up into like divisions or something, make 2 conference winners, or I don't know, because it's kind of ridiculous right now. But what if the Big Ten is like what, Andy, 18 teams?
18 teams. Illinois got to travel to Oregon, actually, the week of my birthday. So in like 3 weeks. So imagine we were talking about the trips for the equipment people. Imagine that's a 23-hour drive from Champaign to Eugene, I believe. Wow. So, but yeah, 18 teams is still so weird to think about. It's like you see a conference game with UCLA. That's not right. But yeah, I'm with you guys here. But I mean, that's why Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA came over for that revenue share. And then for the Big Ten, why wouldn't you add the LA market and then 2 big names in the Northwest? I mean, it's just making money for everybody. So.
Yeah. I agree with you guys. I kind of disagree with how Tom worded that people will go to the big games. I agree with that statement, but looking at these games, I wouldn't call Washington Rutgers a big game by any.
Well, then you don't know ball. You throw the records out when these 2 teams get together. All right.
Very true. Very true. I can't believe I overlooked it.
No, I'm kidding, but that's true. But you think about it, Washington played in the national championship game.
They did, but they lost so many pieces. I mean, I guess if you're not,
it's not the same team. It's not the same coach. You're 100% right.
But yeah, and then for anyone listening on audio, I know we have some Spotify listeners who only tune in to Spotify. I don't know if you're watching the video or not, but if you are not, the 4 games that we were discussing that made this top 10 list was Oklahoma. Top game of the week was obviously Georgia, Alabama, 12 million viewers. But everything else kind of scaled pretty close linearly down to number 10. The 4 games we were talking about were Oklahoma, Auburn, Colorado, UCF, Wisconsin, USC. And what's the 4th one? The Washington Rutgers game that I just spoke of. That was such a huge matchup there between 2 powerhouses. But no, yeah, I think people are going to look at these if these numbers keep consistently hitting, and you're going to, like Tom said, teams like James Madison are going to try and jump ship and get in there before these conferences get so big that they just say, sorry, we can't take anymore. And that'll move us into our last one here. It is FSU and SMU. After using SMU as an excuse to break contract with the ACC and the lawsuit they filed. Obviously, there's exit fees. FSU was trying to get out of it. This is an example they used. They blamed SMU and the other new members as being too weak for the mighty ACC. And then FSU goes and gets smoked 42-16 by the Mustangs. So I want to know from you guys, obviously, again, this is conferences are growing. SMU, like Tom said, people might not know. It's a small private school. That came from the G5. They might not know if this team is good or not. They come in, beat the hell out of FSU, if we're being honest. I know they're bad, but they still beat the hell out of them. So I want to know from you guys, and Andy, I'll start with you. Is this situation more embarrassing for the FSU lawyers who wrote up that suit trying to break contract and using SMU as an example, or is this more embarrassing for the FSU football team? And I'll go ahead and throw the language here from the lawsuit while Andy walks us through his thoughts.
It's embarrassing for all of them. You fucking losers. Like, you sit on your fucking high horse. When was the last time? Okay, I guess last year. They were relevant last year, but we all saw how that went. They didn't make the playoff. They didn't deserve to be in the playoff at the end of the day. So yeah, they should all be fucking embarrassed. You can't talk shit like that level of legal shit that they're talking. You're calling them out in court, and then just get dog walked by them. DJU got benched, by the way, which is about time. FSU is going to get dog walked by Clemson this weekend too. So yeah, it's embarrassing for all of them. It's embarrassing that Mike Norvell's let his team get to this point. It's embarrassing that anybody looked at this team and thought they were going to be good. And it's embarrassing for the lawyers 100%. The lawyers aren't going to come out and say they're embarrassed about it either, which, I mean, I'm sure they had some somebody in their ear kind of influencing that speak as well. But yeah, they should all be fucking embarrassed.
All right, Tom, who do you think should be more embarrassed here, the lawyers or FSU's football team?
There's one common denominator here. It's DJ Ukulele. I mean, he's awful. Andy just mentioned he got benched. Why is he still a starter in college football 5 years later? I wouldn't start him on a high school team or a peewee team. Overrated head coach. Norvell has lost this team. They're just disinterested. They don't look prepared. You can't really fault the lawyers too much besides them saying things that they shouldn't in public hearings. So it's really on the football team because the football team is losing games, no? Like, it's Florida State's reputation at stake. And unfortunately, Mike Norvell and DJ Ukulele are, really hurting Florida State University. And it's a shame. It's a shame. I mean, yeah, SMU, 42 points defensively too. What are you guys doing? Like, they have guys like Patrick Payton, Josh Farmer trying to make the NFL. These guys' draft stocks are really going to get hit here with this.
Yeah.
I get it. You lost Jordan Travis. You lost Trey Benson. You lost Braden Fisk on the defensive line. Keon Coleman at receiver. Johnny Wilson. Tough shit. Every team goes through it. And trying to break, saying SMU is not good enough. Okay. Why don't you try to beat them first before you say that? Beat them a few times, and then you could talk. God damn it.
Yeah, I do like your point there on the timing. This should have been something. I know they had to file the lawsuit, but to use a team like SMU as an example, who, for people who do watch the G5, know that they're a solid program. They always get in a solid QB with a good arm, solid off. You could say the defense, as with a lot of the AAC and even still the Big 12s, where a lot of the AAC teams also ended up. The defenses were a little bit suspect, but yeah, they have a good offense, they have a good program. To use them as an example like that is really an odd decision. I don't know whose idea it was. Like you said, someone might have been whispering in their ear that they really needed to pound on these teams to make an example of them to try and win this lawsuit. But yeah, to me, I think it still has to lay on the football team here. They've just been so god awful this year. This is a team that Nick Saban said would be one of the best in the country. He said probably had the best defensive line in the nation. The best defensive line in the nation doesn't give up 42 points to this supposedly awful SMU team per FSU's lawyers. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with this FSU team. It looks really, really bad. And I'll just read the statement really quick for the audio listeners. So you can also laugh at these Florida State lawyers here. They said the additions of Cal, Stanford, and SMU were made over the strenuous objections of Florida State and other ACC member institutions. The ACC also tapped SMU, which has never been a member of a Power 5, soon to be Power 4 in quotations, conference, in which the Big 12 had been passing on for years. So yeah, they're also kind of calling out the Big 12 as if they're like a little brother, saying, oh, even we're not going to take them. Even the Big 12 wouldn't take them. Of course, we're not going to take them. So yeah, just really pompous assholery there from the lawyers, but it's just not good enough from the team. So I'm also going to put this on the team there. And that'll finish up our growing pain segment and bring us into, as always, it is Parlay Party. Andy, we'll start with you this week. First off, how'd you do last week? Because you've been pretty hot. You've been like 1 or 2 off every single week.
I sucked last week. I think.
Okay.
I think I went 2-2. I think.
Still not too bad.
I didn't win, so it doesn't matter.
All right, run us through your week 6.
So this week I'm getting a little spicy. Typically I'm a 4-leg type of guy. I went ahead and sprinkled in a 5th one. When I first looked at the board this week, Tom, I'm sure you feel the same way. It's pretty overwhelming when we're in our. So Tom and I are in this college football pool where we pick 10 games each week against the spread. I think I'm in 10th place right now, by the way. I'm like 22 and something. Not bad. I'm hitting like 56% or something like that. Problem is the people that are winning that pool are hitting like 66% right now, which is incredible. But when I first looked at the board this week, getting back to my point, I was like, damn, there are a lot of games I don't really like on here. So it was a little bit of a struggle at first, but I kind of sifted through. I sniffed it out and I found 5 that I am all in on. This is a lock. Put your life savings on it. So Missouri money line at Texas A&M plus 106, Clemson minus 13.5 at Florida State, who we just talked shit about. Michigan money line at Washington, getting even money on that. I have not been super impressed with Washington this year and Jed Fish's team, so I think Michigan is good enough to go in there, and for that price, I'll definitely take the chance. Tennessee minus 13.5 at Arkansas. I just think Tennessee's a bigger, better team, better offensively. I think they easily win this game by 2 touchdowns. Then Arizona State minus 2.5. They're hosting Kansas. Kansas has had a rough year. Started the year ranked. Obviously, I saw the Jayhawks play live. They didn't play terrible here in Champaign, but it has not been great for them since they have been here. So I am taking the Sun Devils to cover at 2.5-point spread, 5 picks, 25 plus 25.19, $10 to win 251.93. Let's fucking ride, boys.
I love it, and I should mention, as I usually do, but I forgot this week, the qualifiers here has to be plus 1,000 payout, and you have to have a minimum of 4 legs. Like Andy said, he went a little spicy this week, threw on a 5th, so it's a lot of money. Tom, run us through your parlay here for week 6.
Quickly, you want spicy? I'll give you spicy. Last week I put in a 6-leg parlay. It was gone by Friday night. I had Miami minus 17.5. They couldn't cover. They almost lost. They had to come back in the second half in that game. It was really, really bad. They came back and won. So what did I do? I placed another one, replaced Miami with Navy. The midshipman cashed me in $10 for $271.93 last week. So I did hit, but not the bet I placed on the show. That 6-legged parlay finally came through. The backup, I should say. But for this week, we're only going to go with 5 legs this week. So first off, I like Indiana minus 13.5 at Northwestern and at minus 115. I don't know about you guys, but Indiana has been great at covering this year. I trust them right now.
Bet them every week.
Yeah, 100% until you no longer can, until they fold, which I don't know if they will right now, especially against the Northwestern team. South Carolina plus 13.5 against Ole Miss. You can't really convince me with the way that Ole Miss looked last week against Kentucky that South Carolina can't cover by 2 touchdowns. So I think 13.5 is pretty safe. Also, the Cox are home, so they have a legit chance to cover this game. I sold a couple points there, minus 174. Third, Iowa State against Baylor. I like that a lot, minus 12.5 at minus 114. Toledo, minus 6.5 against Miami, Ohio. Comes in at minus 110. That's a MAC game. And then I talked about James Madison earlier. I love their offense. I think they could score. ULM, I have them in there as well. Over 48.5 points, minus 105. I think James Madison could really score the football. So with those 5 legs total, it is $10 for $195.99.
I love it. And yeah, James Madison, ULM was on the card earlier, but 2 teams that the game that we replaced it with is also pretty interesting. But yeah, James Madison has been lighting up the scoreboard, so the over, when they're involved, always looks very good. And I'll throw mine on here very quickly. I went with a 4-legger. I've tamed it down. I was only 1 off last week, and I also gave an underdog parlay to, I believe Tom put it in for me because Illinois was on the card. Kentucky did the heavy lifting over Ole Miss, and then Oklahoma State and Illinois couldn't pull it off. Would have been a good payout. But yeah, I've toned it down, hoping for a win here. 4 legs. NC State minus 4 versus Wake Forest. Wake Forest has just looked really, really bad this year. NC State has progressively gotten better. They're not, a top 15 to 20 range NC State team that like we've seen kind of where they fall the last decade. But 4 points seems very doable against Wake Forest. That's minus 112. Boston College minus 6 at Virginia. Boston College has been one of my surprise of the season teams. They've stood up with some really good teams this year. Virginia is Vegas and the SPI rankings are giving Virginia pretty even odds here in this game, but I just haven't seen what I've seen from Boston College in that Hokies team. So
is Castellanos playing though?
That I haven't seen confirmation, but I still like it either way.
I love it. I love the confidence, Brian. You shoot or shoot.
And forgive me, I just said to Hokies fans, this is obviously the Cavaliers, not the Hokies. Probably just.
You just pissed some people off.
Some death threat letters gonna come my way. But I sold a few points there, so that one's plus 152. Then quickly for these last 2, Ohio State minus 14 versus Iowa. Iowa has no offense. Ohio State, we'll talk about this game later, but just a tremendous grouping there on the offense. It's minus 169. I believe I bought a few points. Then Navy minus 7 at Air Force. Air Force really bad. Navy having one of the best seasons they've had in their history, and they're scoring like absolute madmen, which is not typical of a Navy team. So that one's minus 155. Those combined for plus 1149, $10 to win 124.90. Hopefully taming it down to 4 can help me out this week. That'll bring us into the last segment. It is, of course, Shots and Chasers, where we walk you through the games to watch this Saturday. Starting with our nooners, we have Texas A&M taking on Missouri. It is number 9 versus number 25. Missouri coming off a loss. Texas A&M trending upwards. Andy, who do you think is going to win this one?
Yeah, give me Missouri in this game. I'm still not sold on Texas A&M. I know they, like you said, they're trending upwards. They did just beat Arkansas. Arkansas has been all right, but you see that ranked number by Texas A&M, and you kind of expect them to win that game by a little bit more than they did. But Their starting quarterback is out. Wegman's missed the last 3 games. Marcel Reed has stepped in and played pretty admirably, I will say, for the backup role. Or do we have a Wally Pipp situation here? That remains to be seen. But I think Brady Cook's the better quarterback. I know Texas A&M is a really, really tough place to play, but I like the Tigers here to bounce back from that loss.
All right, Tom.
So Andy mentioned how A&M hasn't impressed him too much yet. Mizzou has not impressed me too much either. They've had too many close calls, man. I mean, Vanderbilt took them to double overtime last week. I know Boston College has improved, but Mizzou only won that game by 6 points. Theo Weiss and Luther Burden are the premier receivers. Burden has not gotten as many touches as you would like him to get. He does have 4 touchdowns on the season. They rely on Nate Noel in the backfield. Now for the Aggies, it's probably going to be Marcel Reed again. And so far, he's been pretty good. He's been turnover free. 6 touchdowns to no interceptions. Have that for a ratio, and 2 rushing as well. Connor Wegman, they're unsure of his status. I would expect Reed to go, but it sucks for the Tigers. You have to game plan for potentially 2 quarterbacks this week if Wegman does go. And then Nick Scorton is their premier player off the edge. Last I checked, A&M was favored by 2. I'm going the other way here. I like Texas A&M, and I would not be saying that a year ago. Here's why I'm saying it now. Mike Elko.
All right. Yeah, that is kind of a game changer in this situation. Another one thrown. This is Missouri's first road game of the season, so yeah, they are a top 10 team, coming off a tough loss, but it's they're in that kind of zone where they're proven, but not really yet. Whereas Texas A&M, like I said, they're trending upwards. They do appear, I think, to be sticking with Marcel Reed for this game. I think Wegman he's injured, obviously.
Still listed as questionable
Yeah.
on the last report that came out.
Okay, yeah. I mean, even if not, to me, he's had a bit of a rough start. Not that he was supposed to be some elite quarterback or anything, but a rough start. The loss to Notre Dame didn't really look impressive versus McNeese, where they did bring in Marcel Reed for the first time. And yeah, the Aggies are undefeated since that loss with Reed at the helm. So even if he's a game time decision, I don't see how you stick with Reed here. In my head, he's looked really, really good for them. And then Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz going on record saying they scheme well on both sides of the ball, and they're extremely talented, as a lot of people know. They haven't really lived up to the hype these last few years, but they are still recruiting well. They're very talented. And I think they're going to need that talent, especially on defense, because Brady Cook, he's having a little bit of a down year, but he's still looked really good, really consistent, and he's been efficient with his arm. And then they have the transfer running back from App State, Nate Noel. He went for 199 yards on the ground last week. And then Luther Burden III, probably not a top wide receiver this year, but last year I think you could probably put him into the top 15. He's kind of, maybe it's because of Cook having a down year, he's just not getting those yards. But him together with Theo Weiss Jr. Give Cook 2 solid options. So it's going to be really interesting. Missouri's got a top 10 defense on the other side of the ball, but like I said, not really tested. So I think I'm also going to go with the Aggies here. They're at home. I know they've got that weird fan base. They do those really weird traditions, but yeah. I think they're going to be loud enough and rowdy enough with that 12th man to get them over the line here.
Weird's a fucking understatement.
Next up in the 12 o'clock chaser slot, we have Louisville taking on SMU. Louisville still ranked at number 22 after that loss to Tom's Notre Dame, taking on SMU, who just ran FSU into the ground. Andy, who do you like to win this one?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun game to watch, guys, and I think it'll be one that'll be close. I think SMU covers the spread, but I like Louisville to win the game, and the reason why is Tyler Shough has been really, really good for them this year. He showed flashes last week against Notre Dame of why, proving why he is, a fifth-year quarterback that's on his, I think, now third school, Oregon, Texas Tech, and then now Louisville. So he showed that experience and shown that he has a very talented arm. He doesn't make too many mistakes either. On the season, he's completing 65% of his passes for 1,114 yards and 1,114 yards, 11 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. Ja'Cory Brooks has been pretty good for them on the ground as well. Through the air with 368 yards and 4 touchdowns that he has caught so far in the year. If you go over to the SMU side, what they've done really well this year is something you're not really used to SMU doing well, and that's running the football. And that's not to say they don't have good running backs, but you're used to seeing more of an air raid type offense and a lot of throwing the ball down there in Dallas with the Ponies. But this year, they've got Brashard Smith in the backfield, 506 yards, 7 touchdowns, just a shade over 100 yards per game. Look for him to make an impact out of the backfield for SMU for an opportunity to stay in this game. Like I said, I like Louisville to win, but I think SMU is able to keep it close.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, with the Mustangs, look, big win against FSU last week. They beat TCU 66-42 the week prior. They really improved their defense last week. They outscored the Noles 28-7 in the second half. They forced DJ to throw 3 picks in that game, and that offense of the Mustangs is elite too. They average over 42 points per game and run for over 200 yards. Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings in a little quarterback battle to start the season right now. Kevin Jennings is getting the upper hand in that. 6 touchdown passes. Rashard Smith in the backfield averages 7 yards per clip, 509 rushing yards, 7 TDs. Another guy I really like too is tight end RJ Maryland. He is their bona fide number 1 option in the pass game. He is very exciting to watch. Watch him move up the field. 3 touchdowns on the season. And then Ahmed Moses and Kobe Wilson are threats in the secondary. For Tyler Shook, he's looked really good this year, 11 touchdown passes. He's a good decision maker. Look, he faced a really tough Notre Dame defense last week. You're going up against 2 first-round draft picks in that Notre Dame secondary, arguably, in Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts. I know safeties typically don't go in the first round, but Watts is playing like one. Ja'Cory Brooks is their new weapon. I think he's developed good chemistry with Shook so far this season. 4 touchdowns for the Bama transfer. Louisville's favored by 7. Oh, this is going to be close. I think, and we were talking about this earlier in the show, SMU belongs in the ACC. They do. They've proven it. I think they're going to prove it as well here by covering the spread. Louisville wins outright.
Yeah, I do agree with both of you guys. This is going to be a really fun one to watch, really interesting matchup here. Yeah, SMU had their first taste of the ACC last week, and they passed with flying colors. If you ask me, that's obviously FSU down year, but they beat them on the road, outgaining the Seminoles 458 to 285 in the offensive yards category. So this wasn't just some lucky, DJ is so bad he fumbled twice into the end zone, and we got some cheap touchdowns. They beat the hell out of FSU. So again, the thing that's going to tip me towards Louisville here, because I'm going with the Birds, is that this is on the road again. So yeah, FSU is a really tough place to play, probably tougher than Louisville's home stadium, but Louisville's, I mean, most teams are much better than FSU this year, but Louisville is so much, it's another level. Like you said, Tyler Shough has looked really good this year. Yeah, they lost to Notre Dame, but they still played a hell of a match. I know Tom was shitting on his own team last week. Maybe it was some reverse psychology on us that we didn't know, but Notre Dame's still a really good team, and they stuck with them. So the stats here for me, they're going to push it over the top. Louisville's defense, obviously the bright spot here, and part of the reason they were even able to keep in the game versus Notre Dame, they're just allowing 94.8 yards on the ground. That's in the top 25 in all of college football, and they are 17th in overall yards allowed at just 271.5. So that's what you need going up against a team like SMU that just likes to launch the ball, has a good run game, and they allowed 17 points on turnover conversions by the Irish last week. So you fix a few mistakes like that, which I'm sure they'll be all over in practice, and they should be good to go for this week. They're not going to give those opportunities 2 weeks in a row. So I'm riding with the Birds here. Then moving into our midday slot, we have number 3, Ohio State, taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes, who we love to shit on here. Andy, probably going to be a clean sweep here, but let me know what you think about this game.
Yeah, I think Ohio State wins this game. Jeremiah Smith has been absolutely incredible. 364 yards, 6 all-purpose touchdowns. He had that crazy one-handed grab. I don't know if you guys saw that earlier this year, which was just insane for a freshman to be doing. On Iowa's side, they can't throw the ball. Cade McNamara sucks. But Caleb Johnson has been really, really good for them out of the backfield. 685 yards and 9 touchdowns already on the year. Ohio State's 4-0. They've won all of their games by 30+. I don't know if they win by 30, but I think they win by a lot.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Both coming off dominant wins. Caleb Johnson is the identity of that Hawkeye offense. 9 rushing touchdowns on the year, nearly 700 yards. Jay Higgins is a really good linebacker on the second level. 2 picks to go with his performance so far this season. If Iowa's going to win this game, they need to get to Will Howard. And that starts with Aaron Graves, Ethan Hurkett, and Brian Allen. They all have to get to the quarterback. Will Howard has been dominant this season, over 1,000 pass yards with 8 touchdowns. And they have 2 running backs that could continue to move the chains and take time off the clock, and Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Those boys combined have 9 touchdowns already on the year. And then Andy mentioned Jeremiah Smith, who very nice person, by the way. We dealt with him at work this week, and He's playing alongside Emeka Egbuka. And then I just like Ohio State more defensively, too. I mean, you got Denzel Burke. I don't know which wide receiver he's going to cover. It's not like Iowa's going to get many passing yards in this game anyway. But JT is another fierce edge rusher for the Buckeyes team along with Jack Sawyer. So there's a lot of dominoes there that Iowa has to knock down in order to win this game, and they just won't knock down enough. Ohio State wins.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The question that I had here was, can Iowa, which is a team that's known for their disciplined, top-rate defenses, and not at all for their offenses, handle all these weapons? I mean, Quinshad Junkins was my favorite running back last year, and Travion Henderson was my pick the last 2 years for my Heisman dark horse. So this is, without even question, at least to me, the best backfield duo in all of college football, if not two of the top, 4 or 5 running backs in the entire nation. In addition to that, so it's just truly insanity when you can have a 1-2 punch combo like that. And then Will Howard, he's I'll call him average. He comes from K-State. Decent arm. He's not bad, but average at best. But when you transfer from a team like Kansas State, who's not as much of an offensive powerhouse, to Ohio State, and that O-line only lets you get sacked one time, and you got guys like Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith flanking you on each side, who both average just shy of 100 yards a game as your wide receiver options, and then you got those two in the backfield. I think you could be just fine. Average is just fine if you're Will Howard. So it's sort of like Georgia the last few years. They haven't had an elite QB, but you build that team around them with powerful weapons, and you can go pretty far. So it's a question of what Iowa's defense can do here. They have to try and stop this juggernaut. They're ranked 15th in the nation for points allowed. They're only allowing 62 rush yards per game. I don't think they stop those two for only 62 yards this week. But yeah, it's going to be probably their biggest test in a few years with this offense. So yeah, and then Andy already said it, but I need to say it just because we shit on their offense all the time. Cade McNamara, awful, just bad. Their offense, awful, just bad. Almost half the team's offensive production so far this year has come from the 82 carries that they've handed off to Caleb Johnson. So not a very effective offense. I think they get absolutely walloped in this game, which is why I had Ohio State minus 14 on my card. So I'm going Buckeyes here. Next up, in the midday slot, our chaser, we have Nebraska taking on Rutgers. Must-watch TV, as Andy said. I just don't know my Rutgers, absolute powerhouse. But no, Andy, what are your thoughts on this game with two teams also that are trending upwards this year?
You got to respect Schiano. Rutgers off to their best start since 2012. They're 4-0. They do come to the game unranked. They're going into a hostile environment in Lincoln. It is homecoming for Nebraska. Dylan Raiola, the freshman, has looked really, really solid for the Huskers. The big matchup for me in this game is Kyle Monaghan and the Rutgers ground game up against this Nebraska defense, who checks in at number 7 in the nation, only allowing 72 rush yards per game. They really bounced back last week, only gave up 50 yards on the ground against Purdue after giving up 135 plus in back-to-back weeks against Illinois. And I think it was Western Michigan, maybe. No, Northern Iowa, excuse me. Ooh, FCS. But I think Nebraska wins this game, but I think Rutgers does keep it really close. I think they drop their first game. I'm not a big believer in Ethan Kaliakmanis, the Minnesota transfer, now calling the signals in Piscataway. He did beat Nebraska last year while he was at Minnesota, threw the ball 44 times for 198 yards, a touchdown and interception. I don't think Rutgers is going to want him to throw that ball that many times this Saturday. I think they're going to want to stick to the ground game. But for Nebraska, it is absolutely stop the run and make Kaliakmanis beat you. And I don't know if he's going to be equipped to do that. So give me the Huskers.
All right, Tom.
Tough Big Ten game. Nebraska only favored by 7. Rutgers, not only did they beat Washington last week, they also own a win at Virginia Tech. Kaliakmanis, again, a lot of Greeks in the Northeast, so that name rolls off my tongue. Yeah, he's been really good at quarterback for them. 7 touchdown passes. Kyle's been really good in the backfield. That team averages 238 rushing yards per game. You can't stop that. Kenny Fletcher at tight end, great crossing pattern receiver. They got some ballers on defense too, like Tyreen Powell, Eric Rogers. When I look at Dylan Raiola, I look at a wannabe Patrick Mahomes. He is nothing like that. But he has looked good this season. 9 touchdowns, over 1,200 yards. Dante Dowdle has been solid in the backfield. Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks, really solid guys. For Nebraska, too, it's their defense. I mean, Illinois beat them because they really did a good job containing their offense and making plays when they needed to. And they also did a good job at the line of scrimmage of that game. If Rutgers is going to win, they may have to run 230 yards on them. The question is, can they do it? Not against linebackers like John Bullock and MJ Sherman. It's not going to happen. Nebraska wins and they cover. Not by much, but I think they do enough to cover.
Just enough to cover. Yeah, like Andy said, Rutgers looking to go 5-0 and be ranked for the first time since 2012, which is an interesting stat to me because they hold currently the longest unranked streak out of any Power 5 team in the nation. So I think if they win this one, that does end the streak. So I'm sure that's in the heads of every single guy in that locker room. But yeah, as far as Nebraska goes, the best team they played this season so far is Andy's Illini, and they didn't look like a bad team. Illini have a really good defense. Dylan Raiola looked really good, probably had his best game of the season statistically there. He was able to move the ball. But Nebraska's lines just have too many holes in them right now. I do think they edge Rutgers here, but that O-line allowed Illinois to pop off 6 sacks in that game. Raiola is young. I'm sure there's times where he was pushing himself out of the pocket when he didn't need to, and that pressure kind of led to some sacks. But that's a lot of sacks for one game. And then as far as the D-line goes, they gave Altmaier way too much time to make plays, which allowed the Illinois offense to answer back. I think you guys scored pretty much almost immediately every single time Nebraska scored. You guys got the ball back and just even up the score, if I remember correctly. So that was a really good game. But Nebraska looked pretty competent in that game. And then on the Rutgers side, as far as the defense goes, they're allowing a Big Ten worst 5.9 rush yards per carry, but they counter that with their own run game, which is the star of their offense. Running back Kyle Monagai averaging a Big Ten best 147 yards per game on 25 carries per game. So he does get a lot of load put on him as far as the play calling goes. But he's a smart runner who doesn't dance around, just likes to go forward, which is what you want to see because some of these young guys don't understand that. And the stat of the day for this game I had is Monagai, with the way he runs downhill, has allowed him to only lose yards on 5 of his 97 rush attempts. So, like I said, smart running. You want to get those positive yards or at least end up neutral if you're playing against a good defense. So I think they put up a fight here, but I'm going Huskers. And then moving into our late night games, we have first up Washington versus Michigan. This is an odd one to me because Michigan number 10, Washington unranked, but Washington is favored in this game. Andy, who do you like here?
Yeah, I was talking shit about Washington earlier, saying I haven't been super impressed with them, but I will say Will Rogers has not looked awful this year, guys. He's completing 74% of his passes for 1,354 yards, 10 touchdowns, and has not thrown an interception yet. He has 2 receivers that are really good too. Denzel Boston and Giles Jackson have been mainstays in their offense. 30 receptions for Boston, 412 yards. How about this? 7 touchdowns. Jackson leading the team in receptions with 34. 401 yards and a score for him. Obviously, we know the story with Michigan, right? Is they just want to pound the rock. They want to run the ball. Their pass offense is worse than Iowa's. Alex Orji has claimed that starting quarterback position. He has not thrown for over 100 yards yet. He's got 133 yards in 2 games, 3 touchdowns and an interception, 113 yards on the ground for him. Khalil Mullings has taken over that number 1 running back spot for the Wolverines, 540 yards and 6 touchdowns. Also, you got to deal with Donovan Edwards as well, 258 on the ground for him and 2 scores. Michigan is one of the best rush offenses in the country, and they're able to just wear teams down with how long they're able to possess the ball and just keep running the ball. It's one of those things that what's coming and you still can't stop it. And I'm not sure Washington's defense is good enough to stop it. I know Washington's favored in this game. They are only allowing 121 yards on the ground per game this year. I just think Michigan is going to be too much, and especially at even money, give me the Wolverines to win this game.
Yeah, the line on this one, I was really tempted to throw it on my parlay, but this feels like one of those ones where I'm just a lot dumber than Vegas, and it feels like a trap, so I left it off.
Exactly. Yeah, I am 100% a lot dumber than them, so I'm probably right, but I'm gonna take my chances.
Tom.
Oh, look, rematch of last year's title game. We go from Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy to Will Rogers and Alex Orji. Boy, are we in for a treat. Michigan only beat Minnesota at home by 3 points last week. Definitely concerning. Washington, of course, coming off the loss on the road to the Scarlet Knights. Yeah, Mullings in the backfield is a factor. Colston Loveland, their tight end, is really, really good, man. He's arguably the number 1 rated tight end in this year's 2025 NFL draft, mock draft so far. You look at defensively, Michigan is still elite, guys, and that's what they're riding right now. Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham up the middle, filling the A and B gaps, forcing duo blocks. And what does that do? That opens up passing lanes. So let's see if they can get to the quarterback. Will Johnson, really good corner, like him a lot. Josiah Stewart off the edge has 4 sacks. I'm not sure how the Huskies are going to be able to run the football against these guys, right? So that puts a lot of pressure on Will Rogers, who he's been better this year. Not a single interception. But man, they're going to want to run through Jonah Coleman, right? I mean, that's what they're going to want to do. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. They have to rely on Denzel Boston, his 7 scores, and Giles Jackson, too. Ooh, Michigan covers, and they win outright.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, this is, again, I just feel so much dumber than Vegas on this one. But yeah, I think I've got to go Michigan here. Just both teams obviously wildly different than the 2 teams that met in the final. But yeah, I'm sticking with Michigan. They're traveling away from the Big House for the first time this season, coming off some really close games, though, which is kind of what concerns me the most about this. And looking at the line, back-to-back 27-24 wins. Obviously, one was against USC, very good team. But the other, Minnesota. If you're going to be top 10, I don't think you can let a team like Minnesota stick around like that.
Minnesota got screwed at the end of that game too.
Yeah. So I think that was the onside kick situation, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was almost on this news segment this week because I don't know if you guys saw this, but Minnesota filed like a complaint, and immediately the whatever board reviews it took a look at it, and within a day they said, "Yep, you're right. This was shouldn't have been a flag," and now they have changed the rule for where the refs have to stand on onside kicks just because of how bad the call was. So that'll start this week for anyone who has had some issues with onside kicks and some bad calls. But yeah, obviously Washington trying to recover here after back-to-back losses, including a loss to Rutgers last week. Obviously, like we were just talking about, Rutgers looking pretty good this year, but still, a loss is a loss. And yeah, just too many penalties, missed field goals, just an inability to convert in the red zone. They couldn't complete their drives, which is going to be the issue that I focus on. I mean, Alex Orji is really bad. I know Washington Penix is gone also, but Orji was 7 for 12 for 32 yards against USC and 10 for 18 for 86 yards against Minnesota last week. That's just, I know you've got Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullins, incredible running backs. Donovan Edwards, I believe, is supposed to be back this week, so you get both of them. But man, they have no air game at all. So we'll see, I guess, how Washington fares against this run game from Michigan. So I'm going to stick with Michigan here as much as I hate to. And then the last game we have here is Cal versus Miami. Number 8 Miami squeaked by last week, taking on Cal. Like I said, the most important thing, the equipment has arrived, so they will be able to suit up. Andy, who do you think wins this one?
Give me Miami to win this game. Cam Ward's the better quarterback. Miami's the better offense. Sure, they struggled last week with Virginia Tech. I don't foresee that happening 2 weeks in a row. I will give a shout out to the Cal fans on Twitter. If you haven't been following that, basically every week they've just been creating a bunch of AI images depending on who they play and like really leaning into the whole like woke thing. And basically they're like infiltrating the ACC and making all the other fan bases woke like them or whatever. But it's just been funny. But so the thing I'm worried about with Cal is they've really struggled since Ott's gone out. Since he has, been dealing with that ankle injury, they're averaging just 3.8 yards per carry. I don't know if that's going to be sustainable in this game with Miami. And I just think Miami's the better offense. I don't know if Cal's going to be able to hang around. So give me the Hurricanes.
All right, Tom.
All right, as the Mets just advanced to the NLDS.
Oh, congratulations, Tom. Good for you.
Crazy. Yep. We'll get to that a little bit later once we're all fair. But yeah, so this last game, look, I'd like to pick Cal, but I can't. Miami just flat out better. Look, they had an upset scare against Virginia Tech last week at home. They trailed big early. Damian Martinez could not get it going. Jordan Lyle did, thankfully. Cam Ward, so-so game, but he's still one of the top quarterbacks in the nation. Guys, something doesn't seem right about this week with the equipment issue, with the AI images like Andy was mentioning. Are we in for a Cal upset here? I don't know. But as I wrap this one up, Xavier Restrepo is really good receiver. They have 5 receivers, guys, with 200 or more yards, 200 plus yards. I'd be doing a disservice if I did not mention tight end Elijah Arroyo. 11 catches, 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Cubans will be out for him. Tyler Barron, 4.5 sacks. Canes have 18 sacks as a team, guys. They're really good. And Cal lost to FSU in their last game, 14-9. Not a good performance against a bad football team this year. Yeah, I'm concerned about them. I don't think Fernando Mendoza is comparable. I don't think he's comparable to Cam Ward. Miami, Florida wins. Oh, They're on the road, coming off a tough game. You know what? But I don't think they cover.
Ooh.
They win by 7-8 points. They don't cover the spread.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I haven't watched much of Cal at all, but I mean, I don't really need to. I think Miami to me is last year's Washington, where they're squeaking out wins, and they probably will continue to do so down the road, but they're going to be wins, and it's going to put them in a position to be definitely in the CFP, I think, with the way that they're looking, but almost certainly probably in a high slot as well. The one thing that I have down for Cal as a positive is that Marshawn Lynch is the celebrity guest picker on College Game Day. So Marshawn Lynch will be in the house. Maybe he'll try to sneak in and suit up for Cal because they will need help on offense. But yeah, Cam Ward obviously is the story here. He's looking great this season. Heisman front runner. He's obviously got a powerful arm, but I'm most impressed right now that he's been super accurate. A lot of guys with arms like that, the coaches allowed, obviously, but they'll just kind of launch it downfield for those big plays, and it kind of eats into their completion percentage. But still, they're getting the yards, and he also, on top of that, has a 70.2% completion percentage, which is quite high with the way that they like to throw the ball. Yeah, they've got 5 guys with 200-plus yards receiving. They've got 2 running backs with 250 yards and 32 offensive touchdowns. They're just spreading the ball everywhere. They're not as talented as a team like Ohio State offensively, but their weapons are still all over the place. So yeah, those touchdowns come heavy once they get scoring. I am concerned it'll be a little close, but I do think Miami does end up squeaking out the win here regardless. So that will wrap up our Shots and Chasers. That will wrap up our show. Thank you for joining us for this Week 6 coverage. As always, from Stan's links, Andy's links, and Tom's links are all down in the description. Be sure to check us all out. Enjoy the Week 6 games, and we'll see everybody right back here this time next week for Week 7.